Welcome to Chapter 5, JavaScript 6th edition. Working with Document Object Model, or working with the Document Object Model, and DHTML. The D there stands for dynamic. Let's start. So, the objectives of this chapter are to understand how to access elements by ID, tag name, class, name, or selector. Now, working with JavaScript, these selectors are inherent, but if you've worked with jQuery or Bootstrap, AngularJS, they have their own ways of accessing HTML elements. Just understand that we're only talking about JavaScript here. We're also going to talk about accessing element content. We're going to talk about CSS properties, and we're going to talk about attributes. We're going to talk about how to add and remove document nodes, and we're also going to talk about how to create and close new browser tabs and windows within an app. Now, think of an app as, I know that you can't use JavaScript to create a standalone app, but you can formulate a set of pages or use one page to create a JavaScript app itself, and then that page works as like a scaffolding, and then you can change what happens in the page. In a lot of situations, that's how AngularJS works. It's one page, and then the JavaScript changes the page to make it feel like it's a different page, but it's really not. Same page, just a different set of things going on in that page. So, we're also going to talk about set timeout and set interval. These are very important. When you're trying to pull data from other places, or you need a function to wait. The reason why we use set timeout and set interval are mainly if we want to pull data at a specific refresh rate. So let's say you have a REST call going out, but you want that REST call to refresh on a specific timer, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You'd use set interval. If you want set timeout, or to use set timeout, I would think of a real-world example as, JavaScript executes synchronously, but it doesn't wait for the line before. It doesn't wait for each function statement to execute. So in a sense, let's say you ran a REST call, and I do a lot of REST calls. That's why I'm talking about REST calls right now. Let's say you ran a REST call and you want to pull Hacker Newsfeed. That Ajax REST call takes time to go out and get that newsfeed. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can tell your code to wait. Now, in C#, the code waits, it should wait automatically if the C# itself is executing the code. If the C# goes out and tells something else to execute, like a stored procedure, it won't wait, because it doesn't have a way of knowing the stored procedure is finished, because it's in a different system. The same thing with JavaScript. The only difference is JavaScript never waits. So what you have to do is you have to tell it to wait. And you can do that in many different ways. In this situation, we're going to talk about set timeout. We're going to give it a specific amount of time to wait. There are other situations where you don't know how much time needs to be between the function statements, so you'll use a promise. We're not going to go into depth about promises in this class, but just know that in the real world, we use set timeout less than promises. What a promise is, and I'll talk about it a little bit since I've said it, what a promise is I am telling the function that I executed in JavaScript, or the function statement, to wait until you receive a promise back from the function statement before it, that it either was successful in completing what it needed to do, or that it wasn't successful and don't run. Now, a promise is exceptionally nice when you're doing REST calls, for instance. REST calls by proxy, by design, by inherent implicit calling, initiate promises. If you write an Ajax call, there's a success promise and a fail promise. And what happens is, if the Ajax call or the REST call, whatever you want to call it, comes back successful, then the success parameter will fire, because the promise came back and resolved successful. If the promise comes back and resolves not successful, then it'll run the failure part of your code. Now, Ajax calls already have the syntax built in inherent to do that. If you write your own promises, you have to write your failure and success calls on your own. But that's how a promise works, and that's normally what we use in the real world when we want to see, when we want the code to run synchronously, and then we have certain parts of the code that are going to run async, and we need the other function statements to wait or to execute afterwards. In this case, we're just going to talk about set timeout. We're also going to talk about history, location, navigation, and screen objects, and how to manipulate them in the browser window. So, understanding the browser object model and the document object model. JavaScript treats every web page, or treats web page content, as a set of related components, a set of objects. Now, you might be asking, okay, well, what do you mean by object? And that can mean a lot of things. So let's make it relatable in the context of JavaScript, the scripting language. When we say objects, what we're actually talking about are things, just things, in the page that have no specific data type. An object can be an element, it can be a tag, it can be a variable, it can be the data in the variable. When it says objects, it means it treats everything like a set of objects. And at some point in time, JavaScript has to know dynamically what to turn that object into. Normally, like we talked about in chapter 1, 2, and 3, JavaScript does this by proxy. So for instance, let's say you have a string that's being concatenated, added to an integer. What's going to happen? You're going to get a concatenated string, because if you have a string plus an integer, it's going to turn that integer into a string dynamically. It always does that without fail. So how do you add a string that's a number to an integer? And you might be asking, well, when would that ever happen? Let's flip over to the code. So let's say we had a div and that had a number in it. Okay, so div number 3, and in this case I don't need extra lines, and I'll say ID number. Okay, let's go to the JavaScript, and let's say I want to add that number to another number. So I want to add 3. So var solution equals, and then I'm going to call that number, and I'm going to add it to another number. So document.getElementsById, and then we'll say the ID is number, and then we'll say .value plus, and then we'll add it to another number, 3. Now the answer should be 6. Okay, but watch what happens. I'm also going to print this off, or no, I'll just say alert the value of var. So alert the value of solution. Sorry. All right, so if this runs the way it should, I shouldn't get 3, or I shouldn't get 6. Watch what happens. Well, in this case, it said nan, not a number. How do I fix that? All right. I need more cowbell. Hold on a second. Let me fix that. I know what it's doing. It's giving me grief. We'll say ID answer. I can do the spelling. And then we'll say, instead of var solution, we'll say document dot. Yeah, I'll just do it all in one line. Get element by ID answer dot inner HTML. Okay. It did it again. Oh, please. You can do it. I believe in you. Nan. Okay, so this is actually throwing an error. But if I ran this in another context, and I think I'm doing this incorrectly. Let's see. Let's get rid of that. Undefined. Ah, that's why. Oh, it's not value. It's inner HTML. Derp, derp. All right, let's try again. I got 33. Now, this is the answer I was looking for, 33. Now, why did I get that? So what I did here was I took the inner HTML, what is written in the div number, and I am adding it to the number 3, am I not? And then I want to print that answer to the ID, the div with ID answer. But it's not adding. It's concatenating. And the reason why it's concatenating is because if you ever try to use the addition operator between a string and an integer, you will always, 110% of the time, get a concatenated value, because JavaScript always concatenates strings with integers. It'll always turn the integer into a string. It did that dynamically. Now, if I want to make sure that this number is added to 3 correctly, what I need to do is I need to change this. And I need to say parse int, and then run. I get the number 6. Now, what did parse int do? Parse int, and if I flip back over, we can look at it. Parse int turned the object, let me get my writing utensil out. It turned this object into a data type. So an object is a data type, but it's not anything. It really is just bleh. It really doesn't, it isn't anything until JavaScript says it is something. And in this case, if we go flip back to the code, you saw that what it did was it turned this document.getElementById number.innerHTML into a, well, it was a string, and then it turned 3 into a string because it didn't read the string and say, okay, well, this needs to be a number. It automatically says, oh, there's an addition sign here, so I guess 3 is going to be concatenated with the string, so 3 needs to become a string. If I want to add, I need to turn this object that I pulled from the page into something. So I turned it into a integer. And once I turned it into an integer using parseInt, then it did the addition operation because it then saw that there were two integers that needed to be added, not a string and an integer that needed to be concatenated. So, back to the code, or back to the slideshow. Every element on the web page is an object. You can also create objects. A function is an object. Remember, until it's defined with a data type, no matter what code you're in, it's an object, period. That's what it is. And until you say, this is a string, this is an integer, this is a whatever you want it to be, it's an object. And as long as it's an object, you are giving JavaScript the right to turn it into whatever it thinks it needs to be. Now, this can be a pain when you're looking at debugging and trying to find out, why did I get 330? Wink, wink. Looking at your graded assignments and looking at why I got 330 instead of a 33. And the reason why is because you concatenated the strings, even though one wasn't a string. So remember, everything in a function or everything in JavaScript is an object, including the functions. So the browser object model, or the client-side object model, is the hierarchy of objects. So you have the head, the body, and all the things that are inside those two. Each provides programmatic access to different aspects of the browser and the web page. So in this, when looking at the window object, what we see is that everything in the window object pretty much is everything defined in the page. Everything. So if I say window.url or URI, or window.getAbsoluteURL, or window.blah blah 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 blah, it's going to give me whatever the value of that is based on the scope of the window object. So window.onload fires every time you try to open a page. And the reason why is because that is inherent to the window object. Without window.onload, the page wouldn't load. It's a global object because all browser object model objects contained within it exist within the context of the window object. So the window object is pretty much your main, where everything exists. And here's the window object, and then you have all the other objects: history, your cookies and whatnot, location, your URI object, your navigator, your screen, what we've been manipulating this entire time, your screen object, and then your document object. I'm sorry, not screen, I'm sorry. We've been modifying the document object model with the HTML and the JavaScript and whatnot. So the document object model represents what is displayed in the browser, and it contains all of your web page elements. JavaScript represents each element by its own object. It sees each object as one and the same. Oh, I'm sorry, as separate objects. Your dynamic HTML can change the content of web pages without reloading. This is why we like JavaScript, right? It can also change the presentation of the content. So if I wanted to move a box from here to over here, that is basically changing the presentation of that box object. With the combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we can manipulate the presentation of the content. Now, JavaScript is normally what's used to modify the presentation of objects, but CSS can format that presentation, and with a little bit of CSS magic, you can kind of mimic some of the presentation object manipulation that JavaScript does without the added bloat of JavaScript minifieds and whatnot. The document object is an example of application programming and the API, or the application programming interface. The structure of the objects with have a set of properties and methods, as we've seen: getElementById, document.getElementsByTagName, document.getElementsByClassName. All of these are objects with a set of properties, or the document is an object with a set of properties and methods that you can manipulate whenever you need to. So there's a hierarchy in the DOM that's dependent upon the document's contents. Obviously, we have HTML. Normally, if you open your page, this is going to be in the interface. Heads are normally an integral part of your DOM hierarchy. You have body, header. These are more strict HTML standards: article, figure, the caption, and whatnot. But in most situations, you won't find article and figure and fig caption in HTML5. HTML5 is more dynamic than HTML 1.0. But when you look at a page, if you look at the code behind of a page, you will find the DOM hierarchy there, and you'll see what that page is actually dependent upon. So the document object model tree looks something like this. You have the document, so document.onload, or I'm sorry, that's the window. You have document, getElementById and things like that we've been using up until this point. You have the HTML, which is your scaffolding, and then in the HTML you have a head and a body. Now, in the header, you have the meta, which tells you what character set you're going to use. You have the title of your page. That's kind of self-explanatory. And then you have the rest of what they don't have here is you'll have your links to, CSS files and whatnot, right? Then you'll have your body. And in your body, you have a header and articles. Now, this is strict HTML, of course, but we're going to go down this road. I use divs, as you've seen here, and divs give you a lot more flexibility, but they can be a pain if you don't understand how to use CSS. Your body can then have headers with H1 tags that already have the specific formatting that you'll need, and then you have, in this case, a string, a literal string that's defined in the H1, or the first header, the header 1 tag. Articles have figures, which can have figure captions and images, and then you have your figure caption, which is another literal string, and then you have what most image tags should have, the SRC, which defines where the image is coming from, and the alt, which defines if you can't get to the SRC, what should be displayed. Whew, that was a mouthful. So the DOM tree. Each item in the DOM tree is a node. Elements, attributes, and text content nodes are most commonly used. Now, and this is some of the things we were talking about, these are some of the DOM methods that we've been using and can use. getElementById, which is being overloaded with the ID parameter. ID parameter, right. getElementsByClassName, which would be overloaded with the class names. getElementsByName, div, li, body. getElementsByTagName. I'm sorry, I'm incorrect here. This is getting an element related to the name property of the HTML, not the name of the tag. I'm sorry. getElementsByTagName would be div, li, and the like. Query selector all, which will return the collection of elements that match the CSS selector. And what that would mean is whatever tags have a specific, CSS selector from your CSS formatting. I don't know any other way to say that. And then write, document.write, write text directly to the document. Normally you would want to format that in an HTML format as a string. So the text would be, p tag, hello world, close p tag, and then that would print directly to the page. There's more. Document object properties. So these are some of the properties of the document object model that exist regardless of what you write in your code. Now, if you look at what I did, I only wrote divs here, but if I went to the backdrop, if I said interface, and then I looked, see it printed the body by proxy. Well, that's not my code. But if I went to my code here, my code, please and thank you. There you go. Now, it's a set of divs that exist within a larger body, but if this was an iframe, then it would have its own body and whatnot, because an iframe it shows you what the class, it shows you another page in the page. Old school. Sorry. So the document's body element is inherent to every HTML document. You got the cookies, which are basically used for caching and to understand the user's computer information, normally stored at the web server level and at the client browser. You have the domain name of the server. You have the last modified time that the web page was modified. You have the location of the current web page. You have the referrer of the current web page. You have the title of the current web page, blah, blah, blah. You can kind of see what's going on here. This is all properties of the document object model or the web page. The DOM is the web page, if that makes any more sense. So, methods such as getElementById are methods of the document object model, as we already talked about, and they are used, that method, along with other get methods, are used to access several different elements and content that's in the document object model or the web page. And we've talked about the several methods available to JavaScript to reference web page elements when the DOM is being manipulated. So we talked about this and we've used it in great number in the last 3 weeks, but getElementById is one of the most famous and widely used document object model methods that you will see. Basically, it does exactly what you see here. And if I flip over, you can see that, oh, I'm sorry, you weren't looking at my screen, were you? So this was the slide I was just speaking to, and then this slide. This slide shows you the document object model properties. As I was speaking, I apologize. I skipped over that if it was not showing when I was speaking. Document object model elements can be accessed using the get methods that we spoke about. And here we are. So we access the ID value in HTML using the getElementById method. We know this because the last 3 weeks we've been heavily using the getElementById method. And if I flip over to my code, which you were just looking at, you can see that I'm using getElementById to pull both the inner HTML of the answer div and the number ID div. I use ID in the tag to give it a unique name. ID must be unique. You cannot share IDs with any other. Well, you can, but you're going to get an error. And when you try to execute or use getElementById in JavaScript, it's going to laugh at you and say, "Hey, man, there's more than one tag that's got that ID. You need to go back and figure out which one you want that ID to be." Now, that's not what it's going to say. It's probably going to say something like this. If it throws an error, JS Fiddle's really good at proving me wrong, or I'm good at proving me wrong. But, and if I get rid of that error, and then I run this, there's some of these that I don't want. Let's keep going. Cannot read inner HTML of null at window.onload at line 67. I wonder why. Oh, it doesn't exist. Okay. Let's put that there. Save it. Or not. And let's run. Let's get rid of that, actually. And I'm getting... let's run it again. Run. Interesting. Well, if you look at the code, what JS Fiddle did was it picked the first answer div and it just put the number there. That's kind of funny. But normally what it would do is it would throw up either a logic error, in this case is a logic error, or it would throw an actual syntax error and tell you there's more than one answer on the page. Please tell me which one you want to use. The logic errors are the ones that are more frustrating because then you don't really know why. Why is it not printing in the second one? Where did 3 go? Oh my goodness. And then you're like, oh, I have the same ID. Now, I don't know if you can do indexing with ID, but I just suggest not do that. Just let's be logical about it. IDs must be unique. Let's follow the rules. And bada bing, bada boom. It gives me an error. Oh, I did it backwards. I'm the smart one, right? Yeah. Boom. Bada book, bada boom. There you go. All right. So getElementById in its finest. Let's switch back over, and it shows you basically how this works. Now, okay. So in the you can tell the HTML element what type you want the data to be. I didn't use an input, so I didn't do that. But I think because of HTML5, I can tell it I want this to be a number. Let me just test this theory out for a second. Type number, and then instead of parsing it, let's see what it does. This is for science. For science. And then let's run. Nope. But if I said input, let's do that instead. And let's run it. And it's not going to like that because I need this to run on click. Nah. I'm not going to go that far down the road. Let's just go 3. Run. It's not going to work unless I say... I don't want to write an onClick function at all. Alright, fine. Document .getElementsById answer. I have those backwards in the HTML. That's why I was kind of confused. Matter of fact, this should be the number. This should be the answer. And then if I said number and cell, and then I change that to number, and then I said dot. What? I'm drawing a blank. Is it click Right. Yeah. It's early, guys. I apologize. Click. Function. Do stiffs. And then... Oops. Don't do that. Boom. Actually... this should be key press down. And then I run it. And then I say 3. No, it didn't work. Maybe not key press down. Maybe mouse over. Boom. Yeah. I know. Do it again. Do it again. Is it doing it again? I don't know. I'm confused. Alright, so I'm still being really lazy. Let's fix this, shall we? I'm being super lazy. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do all this. This is a lot. This is a pain. Submit. Oh. Alright, ID. And then we'll say, do something. Please. Thank you. Normally you'd put quotations around this, but like I said, I'm being uber lazy. So, do something. And then run. Alright. Is it still mouse over? Oh man. Click. Run. Alright. 3. Still not working. That's interesting, but I said type number. So I'm wrong. You still have to do this whole... That. Wait a minute. It's a text box now. It's still concatenating. Okay. It's still concatenating regardless of whether you tell it's a number or not. That's funny. That's really funny. So why would I call it a number? Maybe because I don't want to have any... Huh. But I can still add... That's weird. I'm going to do some more research on this type moniker. I'm wondering if that's just there because they wanted to do something with it. Maybe it does something and I'm not doing it right. Maybe I'm calling the two separate things the same thing, and that's what's rather, I don't know. What's data? Maybe I hope that's not a reserved word. I'm about to stop this. Nope, that's not working. Something's wrong. Oh well. Either way, I went down that road. It was for science. You still have to do parsint. So for those watching, parsint.value. Run, and it works. Okay, so even though we said type equals number in the input, it wasn't a number. It was still a string. So please understand that when you pull data from the HTML page, even if it says that it's coming back as a number, it'll be a string. I don't know why that's doing that. Maybe the getElementById writes it as a string from the HTML automatically. I gotta have to do some more research to find out why, but just know that it does that. So if you are having issues with it concatenating the first value with the second value, that's because the first value is being pulled as a string. So what you need to do is you need to use parsint. And this is not necessarily as intuitive as one may think. That's why I keep reiterating this, because this isn't one of your assignments. Use parsint to turn the first or second value, whichever one you're pulling from the HTML, into an integer. And then it will do the right thing. Okay, so back to the slides. getElementsByTagName is actually quite nice, especially if you want to pull more than one element. It returns an array of elements, which is, like I said, very nice. The tag name is the name of the element. Now, methods returns a set of elements that are based in an index collection of nodes. So, if I said... And I'll go back to the code just to show you what that is saying. I don't want to get rid of this because I don't want to have to retype it again. So we're just going to comment it out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give class names to all this stuff. So let's say class equals index. That might be a reserved word. X. Let's just make it simple, right? Class equals X. And then we'll say this div class equals X. And then I'm going to use getElements. So if you look here, the document.getElementById is a singular element. Document.getElementsById or by tag name is not singular. So like I was having issues in chapter 2, elements instead of element when you want to use getElementsByTagName. Either way, getElementsByTagName, and then I can say X, and I'll load that into a variable, elements, and then I will run this. I guess I could print this to the, instead of loading it to var elements, I could print it. Yeah. So document dot get. This is very painful. I should probably just say var div equals, because I'm tired of writing this getElementById thing. There we go. Stop being lazy, Francis, and just. All right, and then we say div dot. Oops. Oh no! Don't do that. Document. All right, run it, and nothing happened. Run it again, and nothing happened. Why? Why did you do that? I got document.getElementsBy. Yeah. Syntax. 90% of all errors that you'll find in your code is your fault. Syntax. Write it correctly. All right, there you go. HTML collection. Now. Okay. So now we've got what we wanted, right? Wrong. I want to know what's in this HTML collection. So I could say, now I'll give you, I will show you something new. I could say console.log and look at the console. But let's say I just wanted to print all this to the page. Let's say I wanted to see the HTML collection. What I would have to do is the following. Var collect, or let's do HTML collection just so we have something that's valid. And then we can say for var I equals 0. Now, in jQuery, you can use for each statements. For each statements are wonderful because I don't have to write all this crap. I just say for as many elements that are inside of this array, I want you to iterate through them and give me what is in the array. But in this case, and I gave it away, right? I told you it was an array. Well, it's not printing. It's a collection of objects. And what's a collection of objects? It's an array. So, if you ever get that, where it says object collection, what it really is telling you is it's an array. Data structure. In a sense, that's what it is. The type of data structure is it is in an array. It is not an array, but it is an array. I'm just gonna reference that for anybody who's like really into development and they go, but it's a collection. It's not an array. It's an array. So either way, because it's an array, it won't print inherently. We talked about this too, right? It's not gonna print. It's going to say, oh, this is a collection of objects. That's what you asked for. No, I want to see what's in the array. So if I want to see what's in the array, what I have to do is I have to iterate through each object in the array and print each object out. So, yeah, I know. Painful, right? You can't just go print the array and it prints whatever. Oh, here's all the stuff in the array. It's not inherent to the program. So I'm going to run a for each loop, or I wish I could run a for each loop. But I'm going to run a for loop to look at all the objects in the array and print them off instead of getting this object HTML collection print off that doesn't really do much for us. So var I equals 0. As long as I is less than HTML call dot length I plus plus. All right, so what does that say? I initialize the variable I with the index number 0. Then I said as long as I is less than the length of my array, run the for loop. That makes it dynamic, right? Because I might not know how many HTML elements there are. You always want to try to make your code as dynamic as possible. And then at the end of each iteration, I want you to add the number 1 to the end of my index. So after the first iteration, I will equal 1. After the second iteration, I will equal 2. After the third iteration, blah, blah, blah. I think you get the point. So now I want it to write this. So I'm going to say what? I don't know how to append I know how to append in jQuery. I don't know how to append in JavaScript. Append to div, JavaScript. There we go. Oh, smart man. I didn't even have to see. I remember now. So what I'm going to say is HTML call, and then the index of the call based on the index, or the position of the call based on the index, dot HTML call equals, No, I should say div equals. No. Document dot get elements by ID. I just it's right there. Enter HTML equals HTML call I dot that should be fine. That actually should be it. Let's see if that runs. Error. Yeah, it didn't run. What's wrong? Get elements by tag name. Oh my goodness. Oh wait, no, that's not the error. Stop. That's an old error. Let's run that again. What did I get? Absolutely nothing. Oh, why? Why didn't it work? The console didn't throw any errors apparently. Why? What? Class X. It should have pulled all that. It should have put in HTML call. And then it should have printed. Hold on a second. I'm about to tell someone to go to my voicemail. Oh, they went on their own. Smart man. Alright, so I'm sorry if that was rude. I get a lot of phone calls, and sometimes I really don't know the numbers, and it's not creditors. It's just, would you like new health insurance? No, I don't. Thank you. But I guess they're doing good, their job, I guess. I don't know. For me, yeah. Well, we're not going to go there. That's for another channel. So HTML call, let's just call the first element and see what's in it. How about that? We'll say div.enter HTML and see why it's not working, because that's weird. It's undefined. Why is it undefined? Alright. Then I want to alert HTML call. Hey, this is debugging, guys. I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this to show you how I debug, but I know I got a lot of emails and things from people this week saying that, man, things were really hard because it wasn't working. Well, it was the debugging chapter. Of course it's not working. It's not gonna work. You have to find the errors and fix it. Now that is not easy. Debugging is an art form, and not everybody does it not everybody does it everyone's way. You can use try catch, you can do what I'm doing and just seeing what's going on. You can write break modes and breakpoints. There's so many ways to debug, and there's no right way to do it. Yes, you'll have classical developers that say you're not doing it right. You should use try catches in all your code, and if you don't, you're wrong. You're not a real developer, and you don't know what you're doing. You're this backdoor garage developer who doesn't. Tell them, take a deep breath, and they probably need to go see a psychiatrist, because there's not, and I joke, right? But there's not one way to develop. There's not one way to debug. And so if somebody's going to hyperventilate over how you debug, yeah, yours might not be as quick or as efficient, but if that's what works for you, so be it. Eventually, you'll get on a team that says, hey, man, there's a better way. And if you take it, you take it. If you don't, hey, it's up to you. It's your flavor. So in this case, let's run this, and I'm not getting anything because HTML call isn't printing anything. Interesting. Okay. Let's see why it's not printing anything. It might not be printing anything because it's undefined, but that doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense whatsoever. Oh! Alright, so it's telling me there's an HTML collection. Okay. Wonderbar. Console.log. HTML call. And let's look at the console to find out what I'm actually getting. I'm getting an HTML collection, and it has nothing in it. Well then, I don't know why that is. Maybe that's because it doesn't care? There is some code. That data files. Let's go to chapter 4. Chapter tuba. And I'm going to open this in Notepad++. And I'm going to see what they did there. Let's see what they did here. Oh. Yeah, but that shouldn't matter. Actually. By tag, I'm such a smart guy. I am such a smart. I just did all of this and Then realized after the fact that it's by tag name. It's by tag name. It's by tag name. Not the other way around. So ID answer button submit. Just if I have to use it again. And then input ID number. And then boom. So this should render my little form. And then at this point I can say div, because I'm such a smart guy, answer with an S, and then I say document. Nope. Div equals document dot get elements by tag name div, because we are smart and class is not tag name. And then I'm gonna say div dot enter HTML. Oh no. Yeah. No. I just placed all the divs in there. Var answer equals document dot get element by ID answers, and then I can say answer dot enter HTML equals div, and let's see what we get. We got an HTML collection, but I guarantee you there's something in that collection. So if I wanted to print everything in that collection, I would say exactly what I said before. Make a for loop, var I equals 0 for as long as I is less than div.length, because that's where my HTML elements exist, or my HTML collection is. It's an array. And then I want to add one to I. I apologize if it seems like I keep repeating myself over and over again. I do that because the human mind doesn't retain information. It doesn't create a habit. Habits form over repetition, right? Now, a lot of people don't really know what the amount of times that it takes for your mind to retain something. It takes 7 times at the average to retain information. After the 7th time, you will remember part of it. So I'm trying to get your hippocampus to remember that an HTML collection is an array, and that an array is a collection of objects. I'm whispering it because then it makes you have to listen even harder. I don't know. I'm just making that part up. Okay, so let's run. And I still got div element dot value. Where? Undefined. Come on, lady, be good. Give it to me. There's nothing there because it's an array. All right. To string? I don't think that's the right syntax. To string? Is that JavaScript? To string, yeah. Oh. To string. Nothing. All right. Well. So much for that. I guess I can just say maybe an HTML. I'm not printing it right, but that's how you would print what's in an array. So I would just say answer. I'm sorry, console log answer in this case, and then I'll figure out what I'm doing wrong there in another setting that doesn't require you to sit here and watch me try to debug. And there it is. This is exactly what I should have gotten. And this is not all of it, by the way. There's 2 divs. So because I'm asking for that one. I want this one. Run. And there's my HTML collection. You have div answer and you have div answers. Both of them. And if I want to see what it looks like, it's length 2. Here's the HTML collection on the down here, and it's got all the methods and whatnot associated with it. So there's the length method and whatnot, and I can use them if I want to. I don't know how to call a collection. There's a certain way you do it. I'm not doing this right. But I'm gonna keep going with this because we have 60 slides to get through, and I'm not gonna waste any more time on trying to figure this out. But there you go. That's how it actually works. All right. So back to the slides. And there you go. An HTML collection is indexed collection of HTML elements. Either uses an array syntax because an HTML collection is an array. It's an array. it uses array syntax because it operates as an array. But if you look at the data type, it is an array. It's not doing what I want it to do because I think I have to call it a certain way, but it acts like an array. So each position in, like for instance, if I said, let me see, I think it's not printing. It's just not printing right. Document.write div, and then I said I, which probably would have been smarter than what I was doing before. It didn't work. What is wrong? Document.write can be a form of eval. Okay. Well, I'm confused. Can be a form of eval. It doesn't like it. Oh, jeez. I. Index. There's no I. Smart man. And there's the div element. It's not printing. Oh well. It happens. I don't know. Yeah, it's not printing. I don't know why it's doing that. That's frustrating. All right. Well, like I said, I'm not going to waste any more time. Go back to the form and keep it moving. So, index numbers always start at 0. So if you ask a computer scientist what's the first number numerically when you start counting, it's 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In elementary school, in high school, college, and kindergarten, preschool, we've all been taught to start at 1. That's not where we start at in computer science. We start at 0. So what does that mean? That means that if you're going to index something, if you're pulling the first indexed position of a getElementsByTagName call, you're going to get, or if you pull the first position, you're going to get the second element in that call. So I'm going to switch over here. So in this case, they're pulling the first position of the element of the tag name H1. That means that they want the second H1 on the page. If I wanted the first H1 on the page, I would use the indexed position here of 0. So it would be document.getElementsByTagName H1 settle. That's how you pull the first element. The second element is pulled 1, the third element is 2, and so on and so forth. But in computer science, we always start counting at 0. getElementsByClassName pulls the elements by the class name. Now that's what I was trying to do before when I was using class names. So if I did this, if I said class equals data, and then I wanted to document.write, no, answer equals, or answer.inner HTML equals, oh, I got a better idea, because I would have to type something in there and write a click function and all that jazz, and I don't want to do that. So if I said the button had class data, and I said inner HTML, and then I said class, I said document dot get elements with an S, elements by class name, and then I said some data, which is my class name, excuse me, sorry, and I ran this, I should get another collection. getElementById answers. Okay, this is weird. Answer.innerHTML should be this. Why is it an HTML collection? Run. What? Dot value? Alright, that didn't work. Oh, no. It doesn't have a value. Hey, there it is. Something works. Yay. Okay. Awesome. I was trying to pull the submit from the button, but I didn't realize that it was actually being typed into the button as inner HTML. But here it is. So answer, which is the document.getElementById div here, it's filling the variable answer. And then I said, I want you to write something to it using inner HTML. I want you to write whatever is in the class name data. So here's a class name data. I don't think I need the 0, actually. I can just say run. No, I need the index. All right. Need the index. But here you go. Document.getElementsByClassName. I named the class name data. And then I said I wanted whatever's in the 0th position of that array of the HTML collection. And then I said, give me what's written in that button. Now, I could have said, I really want to print this. Okay, you know what? Enough. I want to see something. This is going to bother me. Var array. All right, cool. And then I just want that. Oh my goodness, I did it to myself. Oh no. It won't let me go back. Oh, not cool. Okay, forget this. Signing in. All right, create new fiddle. There we go. All right, there we go. We're not doing this again. That's crap. No. I gotta print it again. All right, data, and then button, and then I had answer ID. No, this was number. Actually, this was data. Oh, this is so painful. Jeez, I did it to myself. Such a smart guy. And then div ID answer, and then we'll leave it at that. And then I wanted to see var div equals, well, let's do more than one div just to be safe. ID answers. Okay. And then we said, all right, do it 7 times, right? And it sticks, yeah? Okay. I guess I'm abiding by that principle. Save. There we go. Document.getElementsByTagName div. And then I want, okay, so what I wanted to see, like I said, is going to bother me. So I want to see what that HTML element or that HTML collection looks like, so I can try to debug why I'm not getting the written. I want the written HTML. So let's run this. And I didn't say console.log because I want to see it in the console so I can see how to access it. I want to access it. Run. All right, here we go. That reminds, every time I say run, it reminds me of that meme song. Run. No. It reminds me every time. All right, so class list, child nodes, data set, inner HTML, ID answer, div. What am I not calling? It's here. I'm just not calling it. Bruh. All right. Okay. I know what I'm doing wrong. All right, let's do this. So let's go 4. Yeah, we're doing it again. 0. I is less than the size of div. I plus. And then I want to close it so those errors go away. And then I want to print it. So we're going to say var update and choosing. There we go. Because if I refresh this page, I will be very, very sad when all this code goes away. So get answer equals getElementById because I only want the answer div. So answer. And then I'm going to print everything in this HTML collection. So what I did was I looked at the HTML collection. What I saw in the console is I saw all the functions and methods and whatnot, all the properties I can get from the HTML collection. A normal array will just print the contents of the array, but the HTML collection won't do that. I have to call specific code. So what I needed to call was this. Answer.innerHTML equals, ready for it? Div indexed with I, because I is my index, dot outer HTML. Run. Oh man, I thought I was being cool. Okay, hold on. It didn't work. Why? It should have worked. Oh man, come on. What is it? What did I do? What did I do wrong? Get rid of you. Try it again. Oh, I hate it when that happens. No error. Did I do something wrong? Maybe I need to load it into a var first and then load it into answer. Answers var and then say answer dot inner HTML equal. Oh no, there. Okay. Wait a minute. Maybe I did the right thing and I. Hold on a sec. That's weird. Okay, so now I need to find out why. Oh, what? I can't. Is it still running? Did something go wrong? That's not good. Oh man, I really don't want to click that refresh. That's gonna hurt. Hurt a lot. Oh man, something's wrong. Come on, page. Work with me here. Please don't give up on me. I think it bit the dust. There we go. Wait. Can we? Can we even wait? Alright, so while this is doing this, we're going to keep going in the slides. So, getElementsByClassName takes multiple arguments. You can take more than one class. And the only way, well, there is one way that syntax will allow you to do that. You just do a space in between the classes. So, what you're asking in this case here with side green elements is that you're asking for all the elements that have class values of side and green. Alright, exit page. Oh, it's painful. Can you load? No, I'm not doing that. Okay, we're going to keep on going. I'm not going to do that. It's bothering me, but I'll figure that out later. I mean, hold on a sec. Alright, without the for loop this time. Let's just say var answer just to be cheeky, so I can get it out of my head. ID answer, and then I can say answer dot inner HTML equals div index position 0, right? Dot outer HTML. I wonder if that needs to have tags around it or not. I don't know. Run. It didn't work. Maybe that? Run? No, it didn't work. Maybe alert. Oh, there it is! It's right there! It works! I was doing the right thing! Oh man, I wasn't being cheeky. It was just giving me grief. Like, why? So write it. Do I have to... Wait a minute. Do I have to say the string? Alright, okay. Mistakes have been made. Alright, answer dot inner HTML equals, and then to string? Because you didn't like the other one? Is that what we're doing wrong? You're just being difficult. Okay, no, it works, and it's just not printing it, and it's not giving me an error. It's not giving me an error. Why? Why isn't it? That doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Document.getElementById. Everything's spelled right. Outer HTML, inner HTML. Something's not right here. Maybe if I did this, maybe it doesn't like that. Maybe it doesn't work still. Oh, but it writes it as a value. That's funny. You're funny, man. You are funny, JavaScript. This is why I use jQuery. Okay, well, either way, it worked, kinda. This is not what I wanted. I'm doing something wrong, apparently. I don't know. This is not. As a developer, this bothers me greatly, but it is what it is. There's really nothing I can do about it right now. Alright, well, I got it working, and you saw what happened. And if I did a for loop, it'll print each part of the HTML collection, because of the outer HTML is where the code actually exists. So, victory for Tanner. Alright, so, next slide. getElementByName uses the name of the element. So, you can type the name element like I did ID here. And here you can say name input, and then you can pull the element by the name of the HTML element. So, and it works the same. Get elements, remember elements with an S, by name, and then the name of the element. This does not work before IE8 or IE9. IE8 will ignore it if you use getElementByName. As a matter of fact, most of the getElements library were made after IE9. So, just for the record, if anybody is still using IE8 or lower, you have two options. Well, you have three options. You can not use getElements. You can stop using anything lower than IE8 for security constraints and things of that nature. Or you can upgrade. So, but before IE8, the JavaScript engine was not as strong as it is right now. IE9 had all the upgrades that IE8 didn't have. And IE8 still uses strict HTML 1.0. So, query selector allows you to select specific elements using CSS syntax. So, if you've ever written CSS, you know that what this is asking to do is it says, I want the header, I want the H1 in the header, and I want the image in the H1. That's what that's actually saying. So query selector allows you to use this CSS syntax to pull certain JavaScript elements. Now, just for the record, jQuery uses query selector to pull elements out of your HTML page. It makes it a lot easier when you're trying to pull certain things. As a matter of fact, jQuery allows you to pull things a lot more dynamically than pure JavaScript would. With pure JavaScript, you would have to know the ID beforehand and whatnot, and there are certain situations where the ID will change. For instance, let's say you're writing an ASP.NET web application or a .NET Core application. Your IDs will change once you load the page because the .NET Core application will assign its own IDs to the tags, which make it a lot harder to access that ID, especially since JavaScript runs after the DOM loads. And ASP.core is what renders the DOM. So ASP.core does onload, changes all the IDs to something secure, I guess. That's what they say. And then you have to access those elements accordingly. So it can be a pain. Query selector is nice because it doesn't matter. It doesn't care one way or the other. It just is looking at the header, then the H1, and then the image tag. Okay, now I know. The computer says, okay, now I know where to look. And it can index or it can iterate through, because that's what it does. It iterates through the page to find that. IE8 supports only simple selectors. It doesn't support the complicated selectors that you can write in CSS now. So in this case, I want the image tag that's got the logo class name. That's what this is saying. I want the image tag that has the logo class name. Dot means class name. Or everything after the dot, the name after the dot means class. If there's nothing after the dot, let's say that there's no dot here, it's just a name, then that means tag name. If there's a hash and then the name, that means ID. Those are the three main ones you'll run into. As a matter of fact, let me erase this because it looks like I said something I didn't say. So, dot logo means class image with the class name logo. If there's nothing in front of the name, there's nothing here, then it means tag name. If there's a hash table in front, or a hash sign in front of the name, in front of the name logo or whatever the name is, it means ID. And that's it. If it is concatenated with the tag name like this, image.logo, then it means the class name of image. If it's image hashtag name, it's the ID of image. Now, normally you wouldn't do that. That's redundant. You do the class name because the class name can be anywhere in the page. IDs are unique. So you don't have to describe what the ID is of unless you're using more than one ID. And they're not unique. Which, in case you're going to find yourself with a lot of logic errors. So, sometimes not, but it's just best practice to not even go down that road. Every ID needs to be unique. Please remember that. Every ID needs to be unique. Say it together. Every ID needs to be unique. I'm going to make a song, and I'm going to ask ASDF to do some video for it. And it's going to be like a hip-hop song. Like, or whatever, a pop song. Every ID needs to be unique. And it's going to have like meow, meow, I'm a cow and all that kind of stuff. So people remember that. Because I've seen a lot of code where IDs are not unique, and then they wonder why they're getting a bunch of logic errors. Errors that might not necessarily throw in the console or throw when you're debugging, but you know it's wrong. It's not throwing or giving you the right information. So query selector all returns a collection of elements. An HTML collection is an array. It is an array data structure. Array data set, array data type, however you want to look at it. It's an array. So if you do query selector all, what you're asking is you're asking for all the elements that are being queried by the CSS formatted call. In this case, you said, I want you to look in nav, I want you to look in the UL, the unordered list in nav, and I want you to give me all the LIs. This is like a Gary Oldman. Everyone! I want all the LIs. All of them. So query selector only returns the first occurrence. Query selector all returns all of the occurrences. So in the case of the last one, query selector, if I just said image img, as a matter of fact, let me go back one more. In this case, header h1 image, it would only return the first image in the query. So if there's more than one image in that h1, if there was more than one image in the h1, it would only return the first image. However, if you said query selector all, as we did in this case, it will give you all the list items. LI stands for list item, UL stands for unordered list, nav stands for navigation. So the text content property can be accessed and changed. It can access and change the text that an element already contains, kind of like inner HTML does, right? We've used inner HTML a lot. You can use outer HTML for collections and whatnot, but in this case, we're talking about inner HTML. Text content, really, I'm sorry. Unlike inner HTML, text content strips out HTML tags. So, in this case, inner HTML, all we're doing is we're changing the text in between the tag. So, in the case of here, let's erase that, and we have, let's say we had the button has got the word submit there, right? If I just said answer.innerHTML equals words. Well, I can say hello world here, and then I can say var hw, and then document dot. I'm already pulling the answer. Well, holy Jove. And then I can say, instead of answer, var answers equals document dot get elements by ID. I'm only doing it this way just to show you implicitly or explicitly what it looks like. In a real world scenario, I wouldn't make these many variables. So I want to write something to answer using inner HTML. I want to write hello world there. So there's already hello world there. So let's do this. Let's erase that, and let's say what I said I wasn't going to do. I'm going to do it anyway, and we're going to update so that if I refresh this page, I don't lose all the code. We're going to say document, nope. We're going to say answer dot add event listener, and then we're going to say click. Oh man, not answer. It's the button. It's the button. So I need a var for the button then. Equals, now we'll just say button. Equals document dot. No. I can say get elements by tag name. Button. We'll just change it up, right? And then I can say bouton. And then add event listener, click. I want a anonymous function after it, and then I want to write into that function some stuff. Erase that, put that down. Now, in the function for click for the button, what I want to do is I want to write something to answer using inner HTML. So what I'll say is, I don't have stuffs. We'll say input equals get elements by tag name, and we'll say, say it, input dot value. All right, and then I can say answer.innerHTML equals input. Actually, dot value. Okay, so what it should do is it should write the value of input to inner HTML. Let's update. Let's run, and let's put something here. Hello world. Let's submit. And we get absolutely nothing because I am really bad at this. getElementsByTagName. Let's see what's going on in the back end. Debug. Button.addEventListener is not a function. Add event listener. Button. getElementsByTagName. Button. I did it all right. Okay, well then that's interesting. Let's alert button. It's an HTML collection. Oh, you're right, good sir. getElementsByTagName does return a collection. I am really bad at this. All right. Did it give me that again? No, it didn't. Okay, the error went away. All right, so let me explain to you what I did wrong there. I asked for it to return to me all of the tag names from the button that have button in it, but I didn't define which one I wanted. So I could say pull back everything that's in the page with the button tag, or I can say pull back only the first thing you find. And I should have done this. I didn't index. So if I run this, update so it saves, and then I type. Whenever you use getElementsByTagName, it will always 115,000% of the time be an HTML collection. So if you go into an error that says add event listener is not a valid method of the getElementsByTagName that you ran, just look back at the tag name and see why. So this should run undefined. Good, it ran. Yay. Why are you undefined though? Oh, I did it again. This is like a Britney Spears song, man. All right. That's not how you save it. That's how you save it. That's no a knife. All right. Hello world. There we go. For the first time in forever. So what I did was I asked for the first element in the HTML collection when I executed getElementsByTagName with the input argument. I also did the same thing for button. So now input and button have the first input and the first button on the page. Then what I can do, I can also just ask for the collection of elements and then do it here, right? I can say, well, for input I can't. For input I need no, yes, no, no, I don't have to do that there. I can do it here. I can say pull all the, so in this case here, I can say pull all the inputs, and then I want here, give me whatever's in the HTML collection, just give me the first thing. And then that will also work. So I can update, run, put in hdubs, and then I will get hdubs. Now, what were we trying to do? We were trying to see what text content does. So if I said answer.textContent, and then I Actually, I did this backwards. What I should have done was I should have said inner HTML. Now I understand. Dot inner HTML. And then if I said update, run, and then I said, okay. Now I don't want input. As a matter of fact, I want button. So if I said button, and I wanted the inner HTML of button, which I probably don't need a click function for, so I'll pull this out. Update, run. This is what happened last time. I don't know why it's doing that. getElementById answer and source, and then write to it. We were just writing to it, and now you don't want to work. Weird. Run. Run. Cannot read inner HTML of undefined. Of undefined? Why is it undefined? Answer is not undefined. ID answer. getElementById document.getElementById answer. Cannot read. Okay. What can you not read? Button 0 does have inner HTML in it. It should. It's an HTML collection. Data types. All right, so this isn't going to work because it's an HTML collection. So what I need to do is I need to change this. So I'm going to say var button ID document dot get element by ID, and I'll say data. So now, or I could have said outer HTML, but that wouldn't have given me the insides, the innards. There's another call. I'm not going to look it up. It's just not. I'm not going to look it up. But if I said button ID and then I update and run, I get submit. Yay, it works. So button here has inner HTML written in it, submit. And that's what I wanted. I got it by asking for inner HTML. But what if I said text content? Or actually, what if... So, actually, that's not what I wanted to show you. For info, no. Let's do this instead. Let's say... That's interesting. Either way, this is making the inference that inner HTML will give you everything in the HTML. That is, I get it. Okay, so what if I said strong? Submit. I'm taking you guys back, aren't I? And then I said button ID. No. I said answer.innerHTML equals button ID dot inner HTML. What would it give me? Update, run. Oh, word. Let's say we want a href, and then I don't have things written on my buttons, and I never remember. There we go. Oh, that was painful. All right, and then I just want to make sure that it prints. Update, run. It's not. Come on, JS Fiddle, do it. Do it. Stop that. All right, so what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to print href a. So actually, let's do this. Alert. Let's see if it gives it to me. Run. There it is. That's what I wanted. It printed whatever was in between button. Finally. JS Fiddle, man. It's doing some stuffs, and it's not letting me destroy the code the way I'm trying to. Either way, it gave me the aref. So what I did here was I changed the submit in between the button tags to href hashtag and then submit. Now, if I say print the inner HTML of the button, right, then it's going to give me everything in between the two button tags to include the a.href. And sometimes you might not want that. Let's say you want to link what's in the button, like I did here for some reason. I don't know why you would want to do that. But there's other divs, other places where you want to do that. For instance, let's be smarter about this. You wouldn't want to link a link, right? You wouldn't want to link a button. But let's say you had a link inside of a div, for instance. And this actually makes more sense. And then I said, instead of button ID, I said div. It's going to do that thing again where I needed to actually call. Okay, I can say answer then. Answer.innerHTML. And then I said update. And just so you don't get confused, this is not running. I'm not using that at all. Update, run. And it gave it to me, right? It gave me everything in the div. Because there might be a time where you have a div and then you have a link to a place you want people to go, whether it's in the page or outside of the page or whatever the case may be. And then you have your text. But you don't want this. And let's say you don't want to have to say, okay, in the div, there's an A tag. In the A tag, I want that inner HTML. You might not want to do all that. So what you can do is you can say text content. And what that should do is just give you submit without all the HTML around it. Which is kind of nice. And that's what this over here is telling you. So if I just did inner HTML, what it would do is it would give me all the things that are inside of the list item to include the A tag. But if I just say text content, it'll give me just the text, which is kind of nice. So the text content property is more secure. Now, once again, it's not supported in IE 8 or earlier. Okay, and some developers use an if-else construction to implement text content only on supported browsers. So you can literally look to see if text content exists as a thing in the browser. You saw how I looked at the console to see what functions and what methods I had associated with the HTML collection, so I can pull back what I wanted, and I saw that outer HTML would give me what I needed. It's like that. You can look in the console and see it. You can ask the browser to look in the DOM and tell the JavaScript, does this exist? It's the same thing we do with attach event over add event listener. Add event listener was part of the newer JavaScript libraries that were created after IE8. IE8 does not support, and anything before IE8 does not support add event listener. Just like it doesn't support text content, it doesn't support the getElements library. So in order to see if you're using a browser that's IE8 or earlier, you can check the meta, or you can just see if the text content is a part of the DOM. It'll be a part of the DOM when you try to use it. In this case, I can use it, so yay! But if it's not a part of the DOM, you can ask to see if it is. So if document.textContent or whatever, I don't know how to write it right now. So you can access CSS properties through the DOM using dot notation, and that's something that we've been doing with a lot of what we are writing. So in this case, you can change a CSS display property by getting the logo ID through the getElementById method, which is usable in IE8 and earlier, and then attaching a couple of other methods to it. This is called dot notation. You are stringing together different methods. Style is its own method, display is its own method, and or property. It can be a property as well. So outer HTML, what I was using earlier to try to pull the HTML collection information, that was a property. Style in this context is also a property. Now, how do I know that's a property over a method? If it's a method, it'll have parentheses towards the back of it, kind of like you do here. I know it's overloaded, so you're looking at it and going, well, I didn't really think about that. Yes, getElementById is a method. These parentheses here denote that it's a method. If it doesn't have anything associated with it at the end of it, it's more a property than a method. So these are the display property and the style property. And in this case, we're changing the style and display properties to none to modify the CSS. When the CSS property includes a hyphen, remove the hyphen and capitalize the letter following the hyphen. So font family is the normal way you can define the font family in CSS. If there's a hyphen, just do camel case, font, uppercase family. Yes, I know. I said that scripting is case sensitive. But in this case, it's worth it. So in this case, you'll have getElementById with the ID logo, dot the property style, and then in the property style, I want you to get the property font family. The CSS value specified using the DOM reference is an inline style. Inline style. What does that mean? For those of you who have taken HTML, you will know that because it's an inline style, it will override everything else unless there's an import tint moniker associated with it. So this is very important that you remember. CSS values specified using DOM reference, in this case what we're doing, is an inline style. So it'll override whatever is in the CSS pages. Higher priorities than embedded or external styles. To remove a style you previously added with the DOM reference, set its value to an empty string. Now, why is this important? It's important because you can have a button that a person clicks and unclicks, or a mouse over, a person mouses over it, mouses off of it, and you can have it add a style on mouse over and remove a style when they mouse off of it. Now, obviously you can do that in CSS too, but this is just something you can do in JavaScript as well. So, accessing element attributes with period and name of attribute after element reference gives it that what you can do is getElementById to reference the object or element home link that has the ID home link, and then you can turn around and say, all right, I want the href of home link. Href being the property of the ID that you pulled. So I do have an href, by the way. So let's test that theory. Let's say I want, answer already does getElementById, and let's say, well, actually, I'm going to have to, it's not going to give me an href. I might have to say document.getElementsByTagName, a tag I want the first a tag because I don't want to put an ID there, so I'm just going to pull it. A tag dot href. I should get hashtag because that's the URL sign that I put there. Yep, there it is. It pulled the URI, and then it said hash. Hash is what I put there. All that means is load whatever, load the same page or stay on the same page is what it means. If I had anchors in my page, I can have the anchors there, say hashtag anchor1, hashtag anchor2, or if I had certain IDs I want to associate with it, like let's say the page was really long and I wanted to go to ID 1, ID 2, I can say, hashtag 1 and it'll take me to that ID. You can use, so let's skip back over, you can use this to look up the attribute value and assign the variable to the variable. So right now I have hashtag here, but let's say I wanted to change that. So let's say I said, so I don't want to keep writing this over and over again. So I will var a. Boom. That's not right. What? And then I said I want a dot href to equal www.google.com, and then I don't care. Okay, so let's update. Let's run it. Now, if I click submit, it won't do it. Update. Run. Huh. Interesting. I should be able to assign a value to that, shouldn't I? No, I have it here. That's interesting. Oh, I said href. Oh my goodness. Update. Run. And oh, well, this is quite funny. So if I click this, it's not going to take me anywhere. And the reason why, let's run that again, is because it concatenated www.google.com to the JS Fiddle display. I'm going to stop that from happening. That's only happening because I'm in JS Fiddle. I want to change that so it doesn't do that. Maybe I need to do that. Update. No, don't fork. Update. Run. Yeah. Okay, cool. Now it should work. And in this display, it went nowhere. Run. Maybe without the S. Run. Alright, whatever. It's not going to Google. But it did change the link. You can see at the bottom there where it says, if you look at the bottom left-hand side of my screen, it says www.google.com. It doesn't say the JS Fiddle stuff anymore. So what we did was we pulled the tag name, the first a tag, and then we used the href property to change the URL from hashtag to google.com. Now, if you got the error that I got before, it's because you didn't define the HTTP protocol before your URL, so be sure to do that. So let's get back to the slideshow. One exception for accessing element attributes is that the use of the property name class name, you must use the property name class name to refer to the class attribute value. Single class value return like standard attribute values, and multiple class values return in single strings separated by spaces. So if you want to access class names and a specific, let's say a specific tag has more than one class, it's going to be separated by a space and a single string. So if you wanted to get specific class names, then you're going to have to dump that to an array and then access each class name that way. And the way you would do that is you would use a split. You would use a string.split method. Oh, wow. I've been going too long. So class equals, and we'll say class equals moniker and issue, right? Okay, two classes. So let's erase this, and then let's do exactly what they said. So one exception for accessing elements is the class name. So if I try to access answers.className, what would I get? Alert. Run. I would get moniker space issue. Now that's a problem, right? What if I just want a moniker or I just want an issue? Well, what I would need to do is I would need to access the class name, and then I would need to split. So var array equals answers.className dot split, and then I would tell it what I wanted to split at, because if I had more than one, let's say I had another one in here, I said moniker, issue, and problem. Okay, so let's say I wanted it to split. What do I need to split at? I needed to the unifying character, or the character that's used to split these or to separate these classes is the space. So I would say space. And then if I wanted to, I can say alert. Well, in this case, let's print, right? So let's print. Yeah, we'll keep that. So print answers dot inner HTML equals array, and we'll print from the second position or the first position. And let's see what we get. Update, run. I got issue. See, there's no spaces. It's not the whole string. But let's say let's say for instance that I didn't do that. Let's say I just wanted the actual class names. Answers.className. I would get that entire string. Moniker, issue, problem. So let's say you have a bunch of classes, but you only want to get one class name. You'll have to pull it all in using the class name method that I did here, or the class name property, I'm sorry, and then dot notation. See, I used dot notation here. I said, okay, answers has a property called class name. Then what I want you to do is I want you to execute the method split on all the names or the string that's in class name at the spaces. And then I want you to dump all that into an array. Now I called it array. It's a variable that JavaScript turned into an array after the fact. Then I want you to write to the answers, right inside the answers div, the class name that I want. And in this case, I said I wanted it at the first position of the array. If I said the second position, it should give me problem. Au contraire, you should give me problem. This is a problem. Why is it doing that? Answers to, or answers.className.split, moniker, issue, problem. What's going on? Maybe one? Run? Oh, okay. I did something wrong and I goofed. What did I do? Let's go back. That was weird. I didn't see anything change. Okay. So if I said array 2, oh, class name was in there. Okay, there you go, problem. There, that works. Yay. So the DOM includes methods to change the DOM tree. You can create brand new elements in the DOM. You can write brand new elements in the DOM, which you've been doing with document.write, with inner HTML. You can add and remove elements from the DOM tree using JavaScript. Now, create an element creates a new element. So if you wanted to create an element, let's say you wanted to create a div, you could write create element, and it would do that. You can apply that newly created node, or the newly created node is independent in the DOM tree. That means that it has a new div, right? Or you can append to something that's already in the DOM tree, or you can append to a tag that's already in the HTML. This attaches the node to the tree. So parent node would be div. Append child would append that node inside the div, or inside the body, or inside whatever element you asked it to do so in. So the parent node would have its opening tag and closing tag, and then in it, it has its child nodes. So if you did this, append child, you would be adding it inside that div. So for example, var list, document.getElementById navlist, contact, create element li, and then a list append child to contact. Now, a document fragment is a set of connected nodes not part of the document. You can use append child to add document fragments to the DOM tree of the document. Excuse me. So, a new figure element is assigned to last figure with the ID of fig5. A new image element is assigned to last image variable. You then append that to the image element, or the image element is assigned or added to the child of the figure using the append child method. Now this is kind of more the logical way to look at it. So you have fig5 here, and then the image element was added to fig5 as a child. You can create new nodes the same as an existing node. This is called cloning. So you can clone a node based on whether or not you want the same thing created again after the fact. I don't know why create element would be an example for cloning. Weird. I think that's a typo. But clone node true or false. This one doesn't make any sense to me. We'll keep going. But either way, you can clone a node based on whether or not it exists. It'll see if it exists using true or false. Well, it only specifies to the parent node, so. Here it is. All right. That makes more sense. So you have to create the element. Of course, you can't sit in a chair unless it already exists. So you create the element li. Then you'll give it a class name. You don't have to, but you can. So in this case, they gave it the class name mainNav. And then it said, I want you to fill a variable called directions with the contact.clone node. So what you're doing is you're cloning contact. And so you'll have contact, and then it'll be cloned. And so contact has its own li, and you're cloning it into directions. And it will possess all the properties of the li that you created initially in contact. So in this case, it will have mainNav. A new node created with create element is not attached to the document tree. When you create an element, it exists, but it doesn't. It exists, but it's not presented. You have to either append it or insert it into the page in order for it to be visible. Just creating the element won't attach it directly to the document tree for visibility. So append child adds a node after existing child nodes. So before we had, let me go back so I say this correctly. Append child, which appends it to the parent. So if there's already children in the parent, so let's go back to the code for a second. So this doesn't make any, so this doesn't confuse anyone. So let's say I have div, right? ID parent. I can do the typing. And then div ID child, or we'll just say div ID parent, okay? And then we can, don't do that. Update. We'll get rid of this for a sec. We'll keep all of our initialized variables. And then we'll say parent, oh man, document dot get element by ID, and we'll get it by the ID of parent. And then we'll say append child, and then we'll say the child node. We don't have a child node. We have to make one. So let's make one. We can say, let's go back to this for a second. We can say var child equals document dot create element, and then we'll say add a h1 tag, and then we'll say child dot inner HTML equals hello world. So that's the property of child, and then I can say append child h1. No, child. Sorry. So what it should do is it should append to the parent, and actually, let's update. It should append to the parent div. This div has nothing in it right now. It has no children. What I did was I created an element, an h1 element, and then what I did was I added inner HTML to it. I said I want the text inside the h1 to be hello world. Now, in order for it to be visible, what I needed to do was call the parent div and then dot notation add using append child, the child node that I created. So if I run this, I should see hello world. And boom, there it is. Now, if you look up here, when the DOM loaded, the HTML had nothing in it. That it was just a parent div, nothing inside it, no children. Now it has a child. Now this is what this was saying. Let's clone this child for a second. All right. So we're going to clone it using the clone child method, or the clone node method, right? So let's make sure that I have this right. Hey. So we'll say var child 2. I know. I don't like using numbers, so you won't see me using them. And we'll say child dot clone node true. And if I said document dot get element by ID parent append child 2, what will I get? Update, run. I get 2 hello worlds because I cloned the node into a second variable. So I have this first one, child, which I created the element h1, and then I loaded inner HTML, the property inner HTML, into that element. And then I cloned it into another variable. So now I have 2 child variables that I can use. And at that point, what I said was I wanted to append the child, the first variable that I created, child, I want you to append it to the parent. And then I want you to append child2 to the parent, the cloned child variable. But what happened? Now you can't see it here, but what essentially happened was is that clone2 was appended after clone1 or child. So child2 was appended after child1, and that's always how it works. If you're going to append children to a parent element, whether that's a div, whether that's a list item, whatever the case may be, at that point you are, and here I can even do this. Let's say child.inner HTML equals, just to prove to you that the child2 appended after, we can say plus equals I am the second child, I am the first child, and then see what happens. Update, run, and there you go. Oh, interesting. Why did it do that? That's not the way it's supposed to work. The append child adds the node after existing child nodes. So it ran the first one second? I'm confused. Huh. That's not the way it was supposed to work. Oh, it didn't work that way. I used the same variable twice. There. That's the way it was supposed to work. I wrote it wrong. So, hello world, I'm the first child. Hello world, I'm the first child. I am the second child. It's because I didn't get rid of this first text because I cloned it. But, hey, I could actually be cheeky and say, not really. JK. There you go. So this is the first child. I then cloned the first child to the second child, and then I appended the second child. But let's say you want to add the second child before the first child. Then what you want to do is this. So you want to say, instead of that, I don't want to type that all over again. So, and then I'll say insert before. And then I'll have the new child, which is child2. That's the new child node. And the existing child node, which is child. And then what I would have to do is I have to say document .getElementsById parent, and then I say append child, and then I say append child because that's the variable name. So now the second child should be appended before the first child because I said insert before. Update, run, and you can see I actually added, like I said, some cheeky material here. Hello world, I'm the first child. Seriously, hello world, I'm the first child. I'm the first child is what was written into the first variable that we created and appended to the parent. But because we said insert before, what it'll do is you have to say the new child you want to insert and then whatever already exists, as it says here. You can use insert before in cases where you want the new child node to exist before the existing child node exists in the positions you have. So we tested append child, it works like a charm. We tested insert before, also works like a charm. So, and here you go. So we have a unordered list, and we have, it looks like a navigation really, and you have your links. We have var list, getElementById top nav. It created an element li, it added inner HTML to it, directions, and then it loaded a variable about us with the query selector all from the top nav. Now what it did was query selector all, and then it asked for the first element in that HTML collection. It then said, I want you to insert before, here is the new child node, and I want you to insert before about us. So what this should do is insert this li directions into the li, or before the about us li. Now, of course, it only updated the inner HTML for directions. It didn't update the inner HTML for the A tag. So they would have to write that as well. And there you go. There's the order. li directions was created, and then the insert before method inserts it before the child node that you referenced. So in this case, we referenced about us. If you had said order, it would have placed it in between order and about. If you had said support, it would have inserted before support and after order. And if you did a pin child, it would append it to the end. Okay. So if you want to remove a node from a tree, all you say is remove child in that child node. I would test it out, but obviously I think you know that works. Well, you don't know that works, but you can test it on your own. This one's not as complicated as the other ones were. The node will be removed without being assigned to a variable and is deleted during garbage collection. It is gone forever. Unless you bring it back by reinstantiating that information. So the window object includes properties containing information about the web browser or web tab. As we talked before, window.onload is one of the functions that executes every time the page is loaded. It contains methods to manipulate the web browser, window, or tab itself. So you can manipulate the browser, you can manipulate the tabs, you can manipulate the URL, URI. You can manipulate onload, you can manipulate a truckload of things that operate at the window level, not the DOM level, not the document level. And here you go. Closed closes the window. Document references the document object. History references the history object. Location object. Navigator object. Screen object. Window object. And this is the browser object model and all the objects that are contained within it. With JavaScript, we mostly only talk about the document object model, but you can manipulate other parts of the window object, of the browser object model using JavaScript. Oh, some of it. And you can change the height and the width, and these are like used for like modal windows and whatnot. So, and here you go. We've been using alert a lot. Alert is kind of one of those bread and butter methods that is used like crazy. And so alert is a window object that we've been using from the browser object model constantly. Blur removes focus from the window. Clear interval allows you to stop the set interval from executing. It clears the number that's in set interval so that it stops it from continuing to go over and over and over and over. It'll refresh until you say clear interval. Clear timeout does the same thing for clear timeout. You can use close to close the window. Confirm displays an OK and cancel button on your dialog box. And that's kind of nice because then you can return a value back to your browser based on whether or not that person confirmed or did not confirm whatever you asked them to confirm. Focus makes the window object the active window or tab. It doesn't mean it blurs and doesn't blur. It just means that that's the active tab in your browser. And I'm going to say, I don't know you because you are private. Move by moves the window relative to the current position on the computer. Move to moves the window to an absolute position. If you know CSS, you understand what that means. If not, I'm not gonna go into it. It's actually not complicated, but it is very complicated. Absolute positioning versus not absolute positioning versus, it can be complicated. Open opens a new browser window or tab. Print does exactly what you think it does. And prompt displays a dialog box prompting the user to enter information. These are all window objects. So you'll say window.print, window.prompt, window.open, window.focus, window.close. Same here as well, with the definitions here for what you want to use them for. Okay, content. So the self property refers to the current window object. So if I said window.close, I'm actually talking about the window that I'm in. So if I type window.close into my JS file, which I'm not going to do because I've already closed it many times and I really don't feel like refreshing this, and if it doesn't save it and blah, 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 so no. But windows.close will close the window. Self also closes the window, and you don't have to define which window you want to close because it knows self references the current window that you're on, the active window. Web browser assumes reference to the global object, so a good practice is using the window or self references because they're synonymous. So when referencing to a window object property or method, please use window or self. I don't use self, I just use window. Window works just fine. So, and it references the active page you are on. So reasons to open a new browser window can be many. Let's say you have links in the page and you don't want them to change where they're navigating away from. You just want them to open a new tab. You can say, in this case, opening a link in a new window using an A tag, target, wiki window. You can say .blank and it opens up a new page or depending on the browser. So, And that creates a new window object. Every new tab in your browser is a new window object, which is why if you look at your task manager and you have too many Chrome browser tabs open, it's killing your memory because every new tab is a new window object. The open method opens the window, of course. Some of these are self-explanatory, but what's not self-explanatory is what you can overload it with. So normally when you say window.open, you can overload it with the URL. You can say window.open and then the URL you want to open. What you can also do is you can name what you want to open. You can give it options based on the methods that are here, and you can replace whatever is already available to you. So the window.open method normally only needs the URL. So in JavaScript, you only have to fill, you don't, let me rephrase that. In JavaScript, methods and functions, you don't have to fill the methods and functions with arguments unless it expressly asks you to do it. In C#, you can't have an argument, or I'm sorry, you can't have a parameter in a function or a method and not fill it. It has to be filled. In JavaScript, you don't have to. So in this case, there are 4 arguments that you could have filled, but because JavaScript doesn't require you to fill them all when you're calling the function or the method, you only really have to call the one that it needs. And the one that it actually needs 100% of the time in window.open is this one, HTTP with the URL. All right. So the window.open method has options that you can place as an argument. We already spoke about URL. We spoke about URL being the one argument in the windows.open method that's necessary. You can't avoid that whatsoever. But there's other arguments you can place based on options in the windows.open method. Height, location. I'm just going to go off of the ones that are actually most popular. Toolbar, resizable, top, and width are all options that have been used in the argument for the windows.open function. So the window.open function method name argument is the same as the value assigned to the target attribute. It specifies the window name where the URL should open. If name argument is already in use, JavaScript changes focus to the existing web browser instead of creating a new one, which means that if there's a name that's already being used for a tab that you've already assigned to window.open, it'll reuse that tab again. Or it'll reuse the active browser that you're already on. So the window object's name property used to specify a target window with a link cannot be used in JavaScript code. If you want to assign a new window object created with the window.open method to a variable and control it, you would have to use the focus method. Window.focus. So window.close closes a web browser window. Window.close or self-close works just fine. They both work just well. And window.close, window or self.close will use the active window. It'll close the current window, active window. So window objects, timeout, and interval methods create code that executes automatically. I don't like using that word automatically. The window executes on a cycle or a refresh. So the set timeout method executes code based on a specific amount of time that you give to it. So normally it's in milliseconds, right? So set timeout has arguments that you need to add to the function. Set timeout, and then you have, I believe that's the name of that you want the timeout to be. You can put a function here. You can put the name of a function there. Normally you would put a function and then type some things, and then you have your millisecond timeout for how long you want it to be timed out for. If you want to translate that into seconds, minutes, or hours, just do the calculation for milliseconds that we use for the metric system. Or just go to Google and type in milliseconds to whatever you want to convert it to. Clear timeout clears the set timeout before the code executes, so it'll stop the refresh. And here you go. You have button not pressed, set timeout, and then you have a window.alert function that's being called here. And then it's being called after 10 seconds. I'll just do the math for you. 10,000 milliseconds is 10 seconds. and then they'll executing this in the button press function, clearing the timeout when the button is pressed so that this set timeout doesn't execute anymore. It can be rather aggravating every 10 seconds to have this execute. And then window.open index.html, because when you press the button, it opens up the window. So the set interval method repeatedly executes the same code after being called once. Set timeout only executes one time. I apologize. Set interval executes over and over and over and over again. And it's got the same overloads. You got the code, you got your time, and then you use clear interval to clear the set interval. Set timeout actually only executes once. Set interval executes over and over and over and over and over again. And clear interval will stop it in its iteration. The history object maintains the internal list or internal history list. All documents opened during the current web browser session are stored to history. You can also think of this as your temporary internet files. Security features within the browser will disallow you to display URLs contained in the history list. And here you go. How many times the back button was used, forward button, the go. Go is opens a specific document in the history list. So it allows navigation to a specifically previously listed web page. The history object length property does exactly what you might think it does. It tells you how many history objects or how many objects are in the history list. History array, however you want to look at it. In this case, history.go will return, or history.go, and then you have history length dot -1 minus will return the first document opened in the current browser. You can say -1. -1 will return it to. Or no, -1 will return the last document opened in the history browser. Sorry. The location object allows changes to the new page from within the JavaScript code. The location object allows the modification of URL individual portions. The web browser automatically attempts to open that new URL after the location has been modified. So if I want to go to another page, instead of saying windows.open, I can say window.location and then append certain parts to the browser URL that I want to append. Now, why would that be important? Well, let's say you have a website and that website has absolute URLs and you need to use that absolute URL to get to specific parts of that site. Like let's say you have an MVC application and you have a controller and a view. So in an MVC application, I'll switch over so I can kind of type it out for you. In an MVC application, in order to get to certain parts of your code, you don't have actual pages. What you have is the absolute URL. So let's say I say https www.microsoft.com. Let's say that they have an MVC application, and that's the name of their application. And you want to get to a specific part of it. You have to name the controller. So let's say my controller is called home. And then you have to name the view. So let's say home is my controller, and the view is about us. I press enter, and that'll take me to that view, and I can see whatever the controller is trying to display to me. Now, let's say I wanted to navigate to a different part of the home controller. Well, it would be cumbersome if I had to type in window.open and then do it that way. I can just say, because if I do window.open, I have to type that whole URL all over again. .microsoft.com, home, about us, or directions, right? Well, if I did location, I can say window.location, and then I can change only the end of it. So I can say home, directions. It would know that I'm only changing the end of it, the relative part of it. I'm not changing the absolute URL. Now, sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. 9 times out of 10, I just write the whole URL to be safe, but that's the theory behind it. The location also has properties: hash, host, hostname, href. So href calls for the full URL address. So if you want to do what I was just showing you, but you want to type in the whole URL, you would have to say windows.location.href and then type the whole URL location in, and it would change that for you in the browser and load it. And there's also methods. Remember what I said earlier? If you have properties, in order to, if you want to know if you're looking at a property or not, just look at the end of the name. So assign, but these parentheses are at the end, so it's the assign method, reload method, replace method. These up here have no parentheses behind them, so by proxy, they're properties. That's how you would know if you're looking at the code. So the location object's assign property is the same as changing the href property. It loads a new page. The reload method is the equivalent of refreshing the page. It'll cause the current page to open again. The replace method replaces the currently loaded URL with a different one based on what you put inside the overload for these methods. All right, let's talk about the navigator object. The navigator object obtains information about the current browser, and it determines the type of web browser running. So are you using Chrome? Are you using Mozilla? What version are you using? And these are the properties that you'll get from that. So, I mean, I can actually take a little time. This has gone a little longer than I would have liked, so I haven't done too many of the examples, but I guess I can do an example here. So if I said navigator, if I said answer dot inner HTML equals, and then I said navigator dot app name update run, I get undefined. Oh, it's part of the document object, isn't it? No, it's not. It's part of the browser. Browser dot navigator, maybe. Weird. All right, let's go here and let's see what I did wrong. Browser is not defined in Windows.upload. Okay, run. Nothing. It's undefined. What if I said window? I know window's an object, but still undefined. Give me 1 second. Oh. Okay. Case sensitivity is a thing. All right, let's try it again. Oh, that's funny. It says I'm using Netscape. How? I thought I was using Chrome. Well, to answer that question, I am using a Netscape version of the browser, and not an IE version of the browser. And if I looked at the web browser version, so let's say I said I wanted app version and run it, I got Chrome. I also got Safari. I also got Apple WebKit. I also got Windows NT. If I wanted to see the user agent, which all of this is actually really important if you want to see what kind of browser you have or you're using with, user agent, and I ran it, I get the user agents that I was using before. So Chrome actually contains the WebKits for Mozilla, Apple, so Safari, and itself. You don't see any IE here, do you? Netscape-driven browser. Never really went away. It's still here. It's just not called Netscape. Now, this is not Netscape at all, but it can be perceived as Netscape. If I did this, let's say I took this and let's not, and say we did. And then I went here, okay, I'm here. And then I said, I want, let's run it. Okay, so now we're in Edge. Yeah, we're in Edge. I'm asking for pain is what I'm doing right now. I'm just asking for pain. Oh, right. I goofed. Of course. Brain cells being burnt. Netscape. Now I wonder why that is. The browser name is Netscape, but I'm in Edge. I'll let you guys go figure that one out. That's like a little Easter egg that I wanted to put in here. blow everyone's minds. If I did app version, it also has the same app version as Chrome. But as you can see, if I did, let's say I did a side-by-side comparison. Okay, so this is the app version for IE. And then if I did app version for Chrome, are they the same version? Let's open up IE again. Lo and behold, they are not. Not because of this edge piece. Look at, so Chrome is the most forward thinking JavaScript engine out there. Okay, the version of Chrome that IE supports is 58. The version of Chrome that Chrome supports, the one that I have, which is the newest, is 66. That's actually a big deal. There's a lot of things you can't do in IE and Chrome and Edge that you can do in Chrome, which is why I use Chrome. The problem is that if the users that I have don't use Chrome and they use like Edge or IE, there are some libraries that I might use that they might not have available to them. So it's imperative that you understand your audience so that when you develop, you're developing for them, which is why Navigator is so important, because it tells you what you're using and why. And maybe you can make your code backwards compatible to their browser. But yeah, I opened up IE, or I opened up Edge and went to Netscape. That's weird, huh? You guys should look that up and find out why that is. Interesting. Okay, so enough of the mysterious, scary stuff. Let's talk about the screen object. The screen object obtains information about the display's screen size, resolution, and color depth. So theoretically speaking, this is something that Bootstrap is very good at looking at. Bootstrap is great when it resizes things based on whether it's a mobile phone that we're using, or a tablet, or even a 1920 by 1080p screen, or a 23-inch monitor like I have, or a big monitor that I have over here, a 42-inch screen TV that I have mounted to my desk. The screen object allows you to see how big it is and resize, if you want to, resize the window using it. It's centering a web browser window in the middle of the display area is what the common use of the screen object is used for. And here are the properties. Height and width are normally the, well, actually, most of these are normally used in the screen object that I've seen. Common screen object property uses: left position of the browser, right position of the browser, option string, and then open the window based on those parameters. So the browser object model, and we're on the summary part of this now. The browser object model, or client-side object model, is a hierarchy of objects. The top-level object in the browser object model is the window object. The document object is the most important object in your window object. So you have your browser object model, which contains your window object. Your window object then contains your, I believe it contains your document object, or I think they're actually horizontal to one another. One or the other, I don't remember actually. Just know that the window and document object model are window objects, are very important. The DOM represents the web page. The document object model represents the web page displayed in the window. So, if you want to access elements using just JavaScript, we're not speaking about jQuery or AngularJS. These are the ways you would do that. getElementById we've used extensively. You saw me struggle with getElementsByTagName. You've also seen me struggle with getElementsByClassName. Very embarrassing, by the way, for somebody who develops every day. But I use jQuery. That's my excuse. I'm going with it. getElementsByName. We've talked about that. Query selector we didn't test, but just know that it works. Query selector will use CSS formatting to select the object or element of your choice, but it will only select the first occurrence of that object. So if you have multiple divs in your page and you say, hey, I want to call all those divs using query selector, you will only get the first div. If you want all of them, if you want the entire HTML collection, you will call query selector all. Just remember that even if you call query selector all on one object, you will get an HTML collection. And if you rewind this video all the way back to about 15 minutes, you'll see how awful it is to deal with HTML collection unless you understand the properties of it. And if you want to go through the properties, it's actually not that tedious or hard. I was being hard-headed. If you go into the console and look at your HTML collection in the console, you can see how to pull specific things out of the HTML collection. I call it an array. What it really is, honestly, for those of us who are going to keep going down the road, it's a hash table. If you look at the HTML collection, the way that it's set up, the things that were inside it, it was all key value pairs. I know I called it an array. A hash table is an array, but it's more than that. It's a key value pair. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but it's wonderful because it makes it easier to pass data or pull data based on how you want to get it. Either way, just remember that query selector all selects all of whatever you ask for. So if you asked for all the divs, it will select all the divs. Now, if you want a specific div out of the query selector all, you need to index the query selector all using an index modifier at the end of the variable that you instantiated or whatever the case may be. Okay, so what's the difference between text content and inner HTML? Inner HTML will give you everything, and I mean everything that is in the div, in the list item, in the A tag that you asked for, even if there is HTML in it. So as you saw over here, oh, I've been doing all this talking and this slide wasn't up. I'm sorry. Either way, let's go back. So over here, if I have a tag in a div, as I do here, inner HTML will pull the entire thing that's inside the div. Now, if I just want the text, I would have to use text content. I'm curious, how long have I been not showing you? When did I talk about Navigator? Here. So let's quickly go back over the slides just so you have an idea of what I was saying. The screen object obtains information about the screen's display size. The common use of the screen object properties is centering a web browser window in the middle of the display area. And here are some of the screen objects that I was referring to but then didn't have on the screen. I apologize. And then this is how it works. You would define the left position, define the top position. You would add all that to an option string. And then you would overload the option string in the window.open function. Normally your options will be separated by commas so that the code knows that, okay, now I'm dealing with the width option. Now I'm dealing with the height option. Now I'm dealing with the left position. Now I'm dealing with the top position. And here's a summary. All right, so let's get back to what we were saying. So if you want to access elements in the page, you have to use the get libraries. getElementById we spoke about and went over. getElementsByTagName I fought with vehemently over the last hour and a half. getElementsByClassName, something else I fought with kind of hard over the last. Remember, getElements will return to you an HTML collection. HTML collections need to be indexed and called in a specific way because they represent a hash table. Remember that query selector all will call only the first occurrence of the CSS formatted index that you called, whereas query selector all will call all of the elements that equal the parameters of query selector all based on the CSS that you write in there. We talked about that as well. Remember that text content and inner HTML do two separate things. Inner HTML gives you all the HTML inside a tag. A parent tag, child tag, doesn't matter. If you call the parent tag, it'll give you all the children in the parent tag. Now, if you do text content, it will only give you the text and not the HTML inside the tag element. Access CSS properties using an element's JavaScript style property. So if you said getElementById getElementById in the ID name dot style, then what you essentially are doing is you're referencing the CSS inline style of that element, of that tag. And it will then write that onto the page as inline styles. Now, if you know anything about CSS, if you know anything about HTML, you know that not only are inline styles very powerful, they override any other style that you could have. So if you have a page of CSS, but then you write a style, you write to the style property using JavaScript, it's going to override the CSS. That's in the embedded or other file, external file. So you can create a node using create element. You can append a child to a parent node using append child, and every append you do will append after the one before it. You can clone a node or clone an element. We've done that. You can insert before. Insert before means, remember, if you add a new child using the append child method to a parent node, it'll add that after whatever children are there. So if you wanted to add a node to a parent node, but there's a bunch of children in there and you need to add it before a specific child, you would just say insert before. If you remove the node, or you want to, you just say remove node. If you want to open a new window, you say window.open. This is manipulating and using the window object. If you want to close a window, you can do the same, manipulating and using the window object to close. If you want to set a timeout, it executes code after a specific amount of time, but it only executes the code once. If you want to clear that timeout, you can say clear timeout, and it will clear the timeout before set timeout executes. So set timeout has set timeout, and then it's got its overloads. And in the overload, the first parameter, the first argument really is your code, whether that's another function or whether that's the function that you wrote in there anonymously. And then the second parameter argument is the amount of time in milliseconds you want the set timeout to fire. And it will wait that specific amount of time and then fire, but it only fires once. Clear timeout will clear that set timeout and prevent it from firing if the set timeout milliseconds parameter is not met. So if you said after 10 minutes, I want you to give an alert saying this page is going to close, it's been open too long. If the person completes whatever is on the page before that, you can clear the timeout and then it won't fire. Set interval executes code repeatedly. Hey, it'll just keep iterating over and over and over again. And normally you would do a set interval when you want to go out and grab data over and over again. Grab the data, refresh, grab the data, refresh. This is great for dashboards and things like that. You can clear that interval using clear interval, or you can cancel the set interval function using the clear interval method. The history object is, and there's other objects in the browser object model and the window object. The history object maintains an opened document history list. The location object changes the URI, or it changes the web location you're at. And it can modify the URL URI based on what you want it to be. The navigator object obtains information about the current web browser. We saw that where we had that mind-blown experience of looking at the app name and realizing that it said Netscape, even for Microsoft Internet Explorer and Edge. The screen object can give the JavaScript, give you the size of the display, the resolution of the display that the user is using, and the color depth, pixelization. And that is it. This was a long one, but it was a lot. So understand the document object model is way more complex, way deeper than what we went over today, but what we've gone over today will give you a minimum viable product. So what do I mean by that? It'll allow you to use your precepts to get you from point A to point B. Now you know these things exist. You don't necessarily have to know what to do all the time. That's not the name of the game. The name of the game is knowing that it can be done. So for instance, if somebody says, man, everybody keeps using different browsers, everyone keeps using different browsers. I don't know how to account for that. You can say, well, there is a navigator function that can give us back what browser they're using or what WebKits they have in their browser, and then from that we can see what functions we can use. Or you can just keep using if decision structures to check to see if a specific function exists or a specific method exists, like we do now. If attach event exists in the document object model, then use attach event. If add event listener exists in the document object model, use add event listener, and so on and so forth, and whatever the case may be. But this is getting you where you need to be. Now that you know you can do that, then you don't necessarily have to remember how to do that. The how, the rules, is the syntax. The syntax may be the same across languages. It may not be. The syntax can and will change. So Java's syntax is just a little different than C# syntax. PowerShell's syntax is just a little different to use than JavaScript syntax. That doesn't mean that PowerShell and JavaScript are not scripting languages. They are. The difference is that they're both written. They have different rules of engagement. I can tell you right now that if you want to write a condition in PowerShell, and let's say you wanted to see if a variable equaled a value, you wouldn't do it like you do in Java. So if I flip over, if I can flip over, there we go. So in PowerShell, if you want to write an if statement condition, you would say if and then the variable. So I'll just write the word variable here because I don't have one. And then you would say equals to a value. That is how you write it in PowerShell. But in JavaScript, it's variable equals value, or 3 equal signs for strict compare. That's the only thing that changed. The function of this specific if statement did not change. The if statement does the same thing in PowerShell that it does in JavaScript. So knowing that it can contain an if statement is more powerful than knowing how to write the if statement. The only reason why I know how to write it is because I've written it way too many times. So over 7, let's put it that way. So this is not hard for me. I go, oh, yeah. And now I will tell you that when you write PowerShell, normally you're in a Microsoft environment, you may write in C#. Well, C# doesn't use this equals parameter. It uses this equals parameter, or equals operator. Well, that's a problem, you see, because if you're going between PowerShell and C#, you could write the condition wrong. That doesn't mean you don't know how. That doesn't mean you're not right that the if statement can be contained and used in PowerShell. That just means you don't know how to write it because the rules are different. The syntax is different. So for instance, I'll give you another for instance. If you want to say not equal to in PowerShell, you would say NE. If you want to say not equal to in C# or JavaScript, you would say bang equal sign. So remember, this class is to give you the foundational precepts to understand that it can be done. Once you know that it can be done, knowing how to do it is completely different. And that's why we have developer reference books that are 500 pages long. That's why we have boot camps that are 2 weeks long. And most developers can do Code Academy and whatnot in a very short amount of time because it's not rocket science. I know I can do it. I just don't know how to write it. So some of you might be asking, well, then why have all these different languages? And that is an answer for a different time. So we'll see you guys later. Chapter 6 should be coming out very soon. Either way, I hope this helped you. And if you have any issues, either rewind or reach out, and I will respond to you in kind. Either way, I'm Professor Fiske, and you have a good one. Ciao.